Good news, everybody. We've got our first sponsored video. Yes, that's right. We've got these brand new microfinards. We're going to take a look at these. We're going to take a look at all the features. We're going to take a look at all the different fun stuff that you can do with these. Not only that, we're going to show you how to overclock them.
These are 2017 models. No one else has these yet. This is an exclusive to this channel.
Not only that, but we've discovered that we can get 30% more micro pandas just with some control panel tweaks.
It's really unbelievable.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, no, Krista, you're not looking too good.
Just everything kind of got blurry just now. Sorry.
Blurry?
Yeah, and it seems like everything's kind of slowed down a little bit.
Slow?
Huh.
Yeah.
What? Wait, do things look kind of flat?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you
Sinus maybe?
Oh.
Did you eat anything weird last night? Or
Mountain Dew and Doritos. I went over to a friend's house and we played PS4 for a while.
Oh, PS4. Huh?
Yeah. I was thinking about getting one actually. We had a good time.
Wow. Yeah, you should probably lay down for a little while.
Okay.
I think we'll take care of this review later.
Okay.
Yeah. Safety first.
I'll be right back.
Think of what I'm thinking?
I'm kind of afraid here, but could it be Consolitis?
I think it is. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, God. What are we going to do about this?
Well, I've got some ideas. There's some stuff. We can fix it. We have the technology.
We do have the technology.
Are you ready for some mad science? Got my lab coat.
We're ready. Now, if you want to build a new computer, picking out the parts and ordering them and doing it all yourself, that's a great experience and we recommend it. Everybody should do it if you can afford it. But if you're on an extreme budget and all you're looking to do is cure that consolitis, then these are pretty much the kind of thing that you want to look for. You'll notice some cosmetic damage, a little scratch and dent. They're not the most beautiful machines in the world. We've got an i7 860 and two i5 2400s here, and these are from the junk pile.
Literally, from the junk pile. This is typical of the kind of machines that you would find in corporate surplus. Now, these three are Dell, but you could just as easily have gotten HP or something like that. The small form factor ones especially, a lot of people look these over because they're harder to upgrade. And so these are actually better. The i5 2400, I would argue, is a much better processor than the i7 860. This is a little easier to upgrade because it's basically a full desktop system. Although if you look closely, it's got a weird funky power supply connector. But you can get low profile cards to fit in these. Now arguably, these computers are more upgradable than they were even a year ago, because we've got the new 10 series, like the 1050 and the 1050 Ti from NVIDIA. We've also got the Radeon RX 480. These graphics cards really don't use a lot of power, and so the power supplies in these are really the limiting factor for how far you can upgrade them.
The biggest thing is affordability. Now, we paid each maybe $25, $35 of $50 at most, and that would be a bad deal in our opinion. Now, you might think we're lying to you about that and we got some free parts or whatever, but no. RAM, processor, power supply, case, everything, $25 in some cases. And it's hard to find, but we're going to help you out with that.
Yeah, you can't buy on eBay and you can't buy on Craigslist, because usually the people that are selling on Craigslist are people that are doing it professionally. I mean, you might find somebody that's got a good deal if you're really patient to sell it on Craigslist, but most of the time when you're buying from an individual on Craigslist, the pricing is really bad because the person overvalues the actual value of the computer, unless they're a professional, in which case you don't want to buy from them anyway. On eBay, it's kind of the same deal. If you were to sell, just pull the processors from these and sell the i5 2500 CPUs from these, you'd do pretty well. Now, the RAM in these have 4 RAM slots, and so, it's not too hard to find 4 2-gig sticks of RAM, which would give you 8 gigs. If you get lucky, you might get a machine that's got two 4-gig sticks or 1 4-gig stick, and then you could upgrade, something like this to 8 or even 16 gigs of RAM if you can find 4 4-gig sticks. But these are, basically corporate surplus. These are 5-year-old machines, but you add a cheap SSD because the price has fallen out of the bottom for SSDs, and you add a graphics card. Now, for what we're going to be doing, we're going to show you how to do this with the GTX 750, which somebody gave us, and so that was basically completely free, but we're going to operate under the assumption that you would be buying a graphics card, because getting a good deal on a used graphics card is basically impossible. You should just figure that you're going to buy, a $100 or $200 graphics card and a $50 to $100 SSD. But beyond that, these are great because they've got the operating system license and the whole 9 yards.
Now we're going to talk about where you can find these unicorn machines for $25 in a future video. We don't have time to really go over that now. It's its own thing. But stay tuned for that. As it stands, the goal is to, at the price assumption of $25, which is real, get you more performance than a console at a lower or the same price.
Let's start with the ultra small form factor PC. Let's take a look at that. So with this, it's a quick release mechanism. A lot of the small form factor business class machines operate the same way. And if you look on the inside, you can see that we're working with, a small form factor CD-ROM, a place for it at 3.5-inch drive, and we've got 2 PCI Express by 16 slots. Now this is an i5 2500, so it's not really by 16 by 16, it's really by 8 by 8 or by 16. But you can put a low profile graphics card in here like the 750. Sometimes those cost extra, sometimes it doesn't work really well. If you have a power supply that can handle it, you could slam in a graphics card like this one. These are limited to being able to draw 75 watts through the expansion slot, and you would need something like this to supply auxiliary power. But by and large, you're not going to be able to do that in this form factor with this power supply. If you don't mind this thing looking like Frankenstein's monster, you can totally pull this power supply out, put in a regular desktop ATX power supply for this particular model. That's not going to be true on the desktop model because it's got a funky power supply connector. But you can pull this power supply, put a desktop power supply in here and a desktop power supply to supply this thing with graphics. And you can actually put this in here and run a 150 watt graphics card from the small form factor machine. You're not going to be able to put the case back on it, but it will work.
And you're still probably going to be under budget compared with a modern console.
Completely under budget.
And if you're not, the increase in performance from that kind of video card is going to be enough to merit the extra $20, $30 you're going to spend.
This is the secret that Intel and most other companies don't want you to know, is that the CPU is not really the bottleneck anymore. This i5 2400 is 4 true quad cores. Yeah, it doesn't have the IPC on modern CPUs, but it does have the clock speed, and it does have the cache, and it does have some of the other capabilities. The peripheral interface speed is not great. It doesn't have USB 3, doesn't have all this other stuff. In fact, if you put a modern SSD in it, the SATA interface is going to have a hard time keeping up with the SSD. But if you want to beat a console, that's the name of the game, as cheaply as possible. Surplus business class desktop, you can't really beat it. Now, we're not going to break this one down because this power supply works, and this is otherwise good to go. But I happen to have this other one that's basically cut down to the way that we want. We've basically taken out the power supply, we've taken out the drive caddy thing that was here, and this is what we're working with. It's basically just motherboard and CPU heatsink assembly, and this is pretty much all we've got in here. The next thing to do would be to just, figure out a way to install the graphics card.
You might have to get creative with your garbage bill, but it's garbage.
And then you've got your power supply connector down here, which is a little bit of a tight connection. And then you just got to install RAM. Now, I happened to find another desktop that had this Patriot upgrade kit in it, so that was a lucky find. Generally, they'll let you look at the machines before you buy it. So be sure to do that, because sometimes you get lucky and you find a machine that's had an aftermarket upgrade and no one noticed. So add a power supply to this, and a power supply will supply the auxiliary power for the graphics card. And then we've got an RX 480 running on an i5 2400. The i5 2400 is not really going to bottleneck the RX 480. This is going to give you 60 FPS at 1440p, or, again, comparing to a console, it's going to plug into a 1080p television or a 1080p monitor. This thing is going to basically max out 1080p in most games. You add an SSD to this for $100, and for less than $400, you've got a complete machine.
And it's going to outperform, not just match. It's going to outperform. And can't play Dwarf Fortress on a PS4, last time I checked.
No, you cannot play Dwarf Fortress on a PS4. Although you might be able to play Dwarf Fortress on a PS3 if it's got the Linux option before Sony locked that down. Those bastards. I'll never forgive them for that.
I don't think you get very many dwarves before that would frame out.
Let's take a look at the mid-size desktop. It's really the same sort of situation on the inside. Now, the small form factor is one of the more challenging form factors. So if you see this, be sure that, if all things being equal, always go for the physically bigger computer. But if you like a nice little computer, you can get these. These also make great routers, as it turns out.
Yeah, we've got a very similar situation here. Nicer fan. Looks like this one came with RAM.
Yep.
I don't know if this is a network card we added.
Yeah, that's a network card that we added because we were goofing around.
But otherwise, you got your power supply. It's yet another form factor. We've got an SSD already in this one.
It's just hanging out in the case. There's not even any kind of mounting mechanism because that's how it's going to be when you get business surplus.
A little bit more cooling, but aside from that, pretty much a carbon copy. Just bigger, easier to work with. If that's your pro version, this is your intermediate version.
Yep. This one you will definitely need 10 snips because the expansion slots are physically blocked by this bracket, where the other one had a little piece of plastic that flipped out. This mechanism is a lot dumber. So you would need 10 snips or some kind of a modification. Generally, you can't transplant the motherboard into a better case because the connectors are all funky, and I wouldn't recommend that unless you're a really advanced person. But by and large, this is really not any worse of a situation. And again, if you're going to use a low-profile graphics card, then it's just going to fit right in here. And actually, if you want to break out that low-profile graphics card so we can show people how that's installed, this would be the ideal case to do it in.
We should also note that if you can find one that has everything but a power supply, you can go on eBay and just search for your model number of Dell, and you can get these power supplies for about $20-$30.
Yeah, these power supplies are typically 200 to 300 watts, so there's no headroom at all.
Now that will add a little bit to your budget, but if that's your only option, you're still probably better off.
This is a 750 low profile. There are probably 1050s available in a low profile configuration, but if you're adventurous, you don't necessarily have to use a low profile graphics card. So it comes with the low profile brackets, and you still got VGA out, HDMI, and DVI. HDMI out will be good if you plan to use this thing with a television or something like that. But it's literally just like you'd expect. You just put this in.
So if you're looking to mimic the home theater options of your console, these aren't terrible for that either. And if you have those video outputs to use with your TV, that's definitely going to help.
Now keep in mind, in this configuration, you're not going to be able to add a lot of 3.5-inch hard drives. You're not really going to be able to do much. This kind of a graphics card pulling 75 watts of electricity plus the SSD, you are at the power limit of this machine. You're not going to be able to overclock the graphics card because that increases the power draw. You're not going to be able to add, 2 or more mechanical hard drives to a configuration like this because that is the absolute maximum limit of the power supply as is with the 175 watt graphics card. Even though you could use a Molex adapter like this to put a larger graphics card in there, unless the power supply is rated at more than 300 watts for this class of machine, you're not going to be able to do that. You want at least 380 watts if you're going to be running with a 150 watt graphics card. I would not recommend any graphics card beyond 150 watts for a repurposed business class desktop. You could even run an AMD 460 in these machines, as long as it doesn't require external PCI Express power, and you'll be fine. Let's take a look at the full-size desktop. Now, so on the inside of the business class desktop, it's basically cavernous. It's a full-size desktop computer. You can use full-size cards, none of this half-height, low-profile stuff. Everything will work great. The problem with this one is that this particular desktop ships with a proprietary power supply. It's got a smaller connector than usual, and there's no PCI Express power. There's also no Molex connectors that you can use as an adapter for your PCI Express power. But not only that, if you look at the wattage, it's only 305 watts. 305 watts running an i7 with a 150 watt graphics card is pushing it. The best you can do in this machine would probably be a 1050 Ti. Now, a 1050 Ti is still going to be better compute performance than a console, so you're still doing pretty well. If you had a machine like this that had a standard power supply, you could totally replace the power supply. The screw holes might not line up, but it'll otherwise basically be a standard power supply. I mean, double check online the models because sometimes it's proprietary, but in most cases it's still a standard power supply. If online it says it's a standard ATX power supply pinout, then yeah, you can upgrade the power supply and get something like this. Although you'll typically be spending $50 to $100 on a decent power supply for a machine like this. Now, the nice thing about these desktop machines is that they have really big fans compared to the small form factor machines. In this case, I think it's a 140 millimeter fan on CPU cooling.
That's big if you want part of your console replacement to be the media center aspect of it. You know, it's not going to be loud and ruin your movie experience or whatever. This could be an HTPC alongside your gaming rig.
So which one are we going to use for Krista?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess we should probably go... Well, we're going to need... this one's out, right? Because of the power problems.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for the medium-sized desktop.
So we're going to go for the intermediary build because we've got this nice low-profile card, and we're definitely going to use that.
Let's do it. All right, so we've got our medium-sized machine here. Now, the RAM that happened to be in this one was two 2-gig sticks. I want to pull that, and I want to put in that Patriot memory that we found. We also need an SSD for this that's a little bigger than the 64-gig Samsung that's in there. Now, in this configuration, we've got a situation where we are going to need an SSD. And instead of buying an SSD, we actually got lucky and we found an 80 gig Intel SSD, which is just barely big enough for what we're going to do. So we're going to put an 80 gig SSD in this thing, and it's going to be great.
But we're not going to count that as free because that doesn't, that's not fair to you. We're going to factor in the cost of the SSD. We just happen to get this one for a good deal.
And my God, you can get a 512 gig SSD for practically nothing. So it's going to be great. So we're basically good to go. This is our final build. We've got our Zotac 750 in here, which has got our DVI, our HDMI, and VGA. It is running completely off of PCI bus power. We've got our meager Dell power supply, which will just barely be able to do this. We got our physical mechanical CD burner. We got two 4-gig sticks for a total of 8 gigs of Patriot memory in here that was scavenged from something else. Got our CPU cooler and our i5 2400. Let's install, as much as it pains me to not install Linux on this, we're going to install Windows and then we're going to install Overwatch and see how it games.
Now let's talk about the cost. PC itself, the board, the processor, the case.
$25.
$25.
We also picked up another entire computer for about $25 that we scavenged the RAM from. And we picked up another entire computer that we scavenged the SSD from. So if we want to eBay those processors, because processors are easy to eBay, you just slip them in an envelope and you're good to go, we would have made a profit on this.
So let's say worst case, we're at 75. Best case, 50. Maybe better.
Maybe better. If you were to do the right thing and get a new SSD, like a 256 gig SSD, then you might be out another $100. And if you get a better video card, the video card is really going to be the thing that costs you here. If you get a 1050 Ti, $150. If your machine will support it and you get like an RX 480, $200, $220, something like that, you end up with a really good, really solid machine. In our case, because we don't want to push it with a power supply, we're going for a graphics card that does not require external power, but that'll still best a console.
But as you can see, before we get to the video card, we're pretty much under $100.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of room for you to play with that power supply, assuming you've got a board that supports it, and the video card, both. You've got, what's a PS4 retail for these days?
$300-400?
Is it $400 or $500?
$500?
It might be $400 now. You're under budget.
Yeah, you're definitely under budget. Just a little creativity will get you a long way. And you don't have to go everything used. We're saying you get some new parts. And this is upgradable. It's modular. I mean, it's still basically a standard machine. So you can take your SSD and you can take your graphics card and take them to a new machine if you get a new machine on down the road. Because, I mean, let's face it, most of the hardware in here is 5 years old.
Yeah. But let's also look at the life cycle of a console.
About 5 years.
So, hey.
Yeah.
You get 5 more years out of this, you're ready for an upgrade.
Yep. Now, for our next video, we're going to be showing you how to get a good deal on a used machine, what to look for on the motherboard. Does it have heat discoloration? Are the capacitors swollen? There's a lot of little things you can look for. Hell, there are certain smells you should be on the lookout for when you're buying a used machine. You can pick up 2 or 3 used machines with compatible parts, get a really good deal, and you'll be off to the races.
Yeah, you have to kind of think of this in terms of, these are crazy prices. This is super cheap, but you're going to trade some time for money in this case, because you got to do your research. You got to find these things. You got to look them over. You got to make sure they're good. You got to do your homework. So a console is the easy solution. This is certainly not. But if you're willing to put in that time and the effort, you're going to get something a lot better.
Yeah, you can definitely be in a lot better spot. And that's, incidentally, the price difference. Like, if you were to put this together and sell it on Craigslist or sell it on eBay, you know, that's a great job if you're a student and you're looking for something to do in the summer. If you can find some of these at surplus from a school or university or something like that in your local area, you can pick up 4 or 5 or 6 of these, fix them up, sell them to friends, family members, whatever. Make a couple of $100, build a nice machine for yourself. It's a great way to spend a summer.
But for now, we've spent a lot of time showing you how to do this when we've got a sick patient.
Let's get Overwatch on this thing and see how that goes.
Ah! No! Of course, Lorian doesn't protect me. Good job. We have a Bastion. Come on, get in there. Or just charge in by yourself. That's fine. Actually, a stunningly bad game. Does anyone have their ultimate? Watch, none of them are going to tell me. They actually all have their ultimate. Oh, look, Lucio told me. Nice, okay. Go, May, you're powered up. Get in there. Kill her. Why are you not killing her? Ah!
Now, our diagnosis was spot on, and our treatment was a success. But one of the byproducts of building your own PCs is you're generally going to want an upgrade pretty soon because the process is fun and you're going to like what you get out of it. So she already wants a new one.
But this one's pretty okay. But we are giving this away. You'll have to stay tuned to the next video, though. We're doing another video in this series, How to Buy a Used Computer. If you guys watch that one, we'll give you details about how to win this one.
We're going to give you a few pointers that you can use to do better when you're buying a used computer. Generally, you don't want to really buy the complete machine off of eBay or Craigslist. We're going to show you how you can find local deals that are not really on the internet. They're really the best deals to be had, not actually on the internet. But we're going to show you how to do that. But with this, you can cure Consolitis. I mean, it's a GTX 750, and the GTX 750 actually comes to us from one of the viewers, Yakanukane.
Yeah, when it's a long username, but we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Everybody should thank him in the forum. It is a worldwide giveaway, although hopefully we can get it to you for less than $150 because, but you know, please don't be in the Australian outback. And also, you know, if you've already got a really nice computer, at least give it away to somebody that's suffering from a console problem if you get it. But you're going to have to stay tuned to the next video for us to actually run the contest. So be sure to watch the next video to enter.
Yes. Thank you for watching. Bye.
See you guys.
Now I want to take this CPU to its limit. I want a 480, and I want it in this form factor.
You want to put a full height graphics card in a small form factor Dell from 5 years ago.
I'll accept nothing less.
We'll take it from a guy in a lab coat. You can totally do that, and that's what we're going to do now. Basically, the first thing to do is to hook up the CPU power. So in our case, we're just going to shove this in and hope for the best and see if it posts. Our motherboard power is in. Now with a full-size graphics card, the motherboard power is really not in a great location. I really wish that it was a right angle connection. Definitely was not designed for a full-length card, but we're going to try to shove it in there and make sure it works. This machine's definitely not ideal for the work that we're doing. Bad news, everyone. We're going to have to take the connector off of the graphics card. Now you could also use 10 snips and cut the bottom off, which is irresponsible and not something I'm going to tell you to do because it's not reversible. But you're just trimming the metal up a bit. It's fine.
The issue is this case is just too shallow for the bottom part there. It's not anything functional.
Now we've removed the bracket. So you'll need some other kind of way to mechanically fasten this to the case. Now we're going to need a monitor to actually plug it in and make sure that it works.
Look what I found.
Oh, look at that. There's a monitor. Here we go. Moment of truth. Oh, look at that.
Oh, yeah.
And there we are. We're booted into Windows 10. We would have changed the background from something, but Windows wants us to activate it, and we're not going to activate it for a video because Really, Microsoft? Really?
You can't change the background unless you pay us.
Well, the irony is that it does actually have a legit Windows 10 license, but because of the constant reinstallation and other nonsense, it's just not going to work. But there you go. Your RX 480 is running on this piece of crap. This is what I like to call a Firefly class machine, because it may not look like much, but it'll get you where you want to go.
It's beautiful to the right eyes.
Full RX 480 performance, i5 2400, 8 gigs of RAM, upgradable. You got 2 empty RAM slots. You can take this thing to 16 gigs of RAM. Holy crap, less than $300.